Welcome back to PR After Hours. I'm your host, Alex Greenwood, bringing you your weekly cocktail of PR and marketing tips that will help you and your business. Hey, welcome back to the lounge, listeners. Hey, today is part 2 of our interview with Marc Whitt. He is Director of Media and Strategic Relations at the University of Kentucky, and he's the author of PR Lessons Learned Along the Way, Strategies, Tips, and Advice for the Higher Ed and Nonprofit Public Relations Professional. In its first month, this book was on Amazon's #1 book for new releases in public relations. It has since been named PRCA's recommended read list, and Book Authority named it #1 best new PR book to read in 2020. And it's ranked number 13 as being among the 100 best PR books of all time. And once you listen to the interview with Marc, you'll know why, because it's a fantastic book. If you didn't hear the first episode with Marc from last week, why don't you do yourself a favor, go back and listen to that, and then come back and join us in the middle of that conversation here as we close out the interview here in part 2. And of course, don't forget, there's a way for you to win an autographed copy of Marc's book. So right after these messages, we'll get to our interview with Marc Whitt. Hello, listeners. It's me, Alex, from PR After Hours. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. And I wanted to talk to you just for a moment about the way I get this show right into your earbuds every week. It's because I use Anchor FM. Now, I've told you previously that I've been podcasting since 2006, back when we used stone knives and bear skins and a couple of Dixie cups and string. Anchor FM has really streamlined this and made it simpler for people who don't know the first thing about setting up a podcast or don't have, time to learn all the pro tools and stuff, because it's all right here. First thing that's important to know is it's free. There are certain tools that will allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will then distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. That's huge. Distribution is a big pain in the butt, to be honest with you, so it's really great Anchor FM can do that for you, and you're not paying hosting fees. That adds up every month. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started, and be sure to join me in the virtual cocktail lounge on PR After Hours. Voting isn't just going to the polls on election day anymore. Options like early voting, mail-in voting, and ballot drop boxes are available to more voters and are growing in popularity. How to Vote, a tool created by Democracy Works, breaks down the options your state offers for casting a ballot, empowering you to decide when and where to vote. Democracy works best when we all vote, but misinformation and confusion about election procedures have resulted in low voter turnout. How to Vote, a tool created by Democracy Works, takes the guesswork out of the voting process. It's easy to use and helps folks from all over the country overcome many of the process barriers to voting. Democracy Works is committed to helping you vote no matter what. Their tool, How to Vote, does just that. So decide when and where you'll vote this year at howto.vote. Even though this is a presidential election, and boy, can anybody forget that it's a presidential election? There are many more candidates on the ballot besides the president, and they're all important. So go to Ballot Ready for a nonpartisan guide to your entire ballot. From there, you can compare candidates based on stances on issues, biography, or endorsements, and then save your choices to use when you vote by mail or in the voting booth. You can even request your absentee ballot or make a plan to vote early or on election day. This election matters. Make sure you have a plan to vote and vote informed. This year, with changes to polling places and vote by mail laws as a result of COVID, it's more important than ever to have a plan to vote. 30% of voters take the time to vote and then leave some part of their ballot blank. This is a missed opportunity to choose the leaders of our communities. Hey, it's okay if you're unfamiliar with some of the more local positions. I know I don't know everything when I get in there, but I try to. And that's why I recommend hosting a ballot party. Get together with friends over Zoom, split up the research, and go through your ballots together. Go to ballotready.org and enter your address to make a plan to vote and vote informed. one of the best quotes too in the book is something I already mentioned about Mark. And he says this: in public relations, the professional must lead with a servant's heart. Some people can say, oh, that's kind of corny. What does that really mean? But what that means is, and I hear this, and Mark has said this about 2 or 3 times since we started this call, even before we started the recording, he said, where I served. That's what he talks about, where he's previously been or where he is, where I serve. I believe in a servant mentality, Mark, but I guess I've never quite framed it as where I serve.
Well, as we work with the public, we need to always be thinking in the back of our minds, how can I make life better or easier for this individual? They may be a client, they may be someone across campus who's looking for your skill, your professional background, your expertise to make a difference. And so, sometimes people think, and maybe this is more outside the profession, but sometimes people think that that the PR person is the person who's always out front, who's in the spotlight. But boy, as you well know, so much of our work is actually behind the curtain, so to speak. I mean, we're not on center stage, but we're the ones who are enabling others to get that spotlight or to be able to achieve. And so that's where part of this servant's heart comes into play.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. There's some other things you mentioned in the book. Never surprise the president, which is a great quote.
Yes.
It never upstage the president. Never upstage the president. I kind of did that once accidentally. I was asked to give a speech at a dinner for the Chamber of Commerce because I was fairly new to the job at this small college. Well, they said, give us a speech on what you think. So I did this whole speech. I didn't just make a few off-the-cuff remarks. I gave an actual speech, like a 20-minute speech about where I thought the rural economy was going and what effect it'll have on the university or the college and all this stuff. And we got done, and the president clapped me in the back and said, wow, that was like a real speech. And I was like, isn't that what I was supposed to do? And then a VP who I was close to later, she said, he doesn't mad or anything, but you kind of gave a better speech than his remarks. So you need to be really sure about what you're supposed to be doing. I was like, well, what did I do wrong? She goes, you didn't do anything wrong. Just adjust. So I love that. But Mark,
I was going to say, if just a real quick comment, why that quote is in the book and placed at the very front of the book. It's in honor of the president that I had when I was an undergraduate in college, and I had an internship in the Department of Music as the PR person. Well, I won't go into all the details about what was required of me, but one of the points that I was going to be graded on for that internship was to have the president and his wife to attend this big end of the semester concert. Now, neither one of them had attended this performance, and so I was being graded on to get them there. Well, and the other one was to have the governor and the first lady to be present.
Oh, was that
so big challenges. So I went to work, and I had written a letter thinking that it was perfectly fine. I was a junior in college. I had written a letter to the governor on behalf of the president, letting him know that they were invited to this wonderful concert. Well, about 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks had passed. I got back to my room, and my roommate said, Mark, what are you doing here? I thought, well, it's the end of the day. He said, Mark, the president's office just called, and the president wants to see you right away. Well, this was a university of about 17,000, 18,000, and he didn't know me, from Adam, but obviously that got my attention. So I ran across the campus, was begging people to pray for me along the way because I didn't know what I was in for. I get into the president's office, and he's signing a bunch of letters, and he never would look up at me. And after a certain bit, he would start asking me questions about, where I was from, what my career choices were. And finally, I thought, well, that's going to be kind of cool. And I explained to him I was going into public relations. He then looks at this stack on his desk of letters to the right, and he pulls this letter right off the top, and he said, quote, imagine this president's surprise when I heard from the governor today accepting my kind invitation to be Well, and so he looks at me and explained to me how this was changing all of their plans for that particular weekend. And he said, son, let this old president give you a word of advice. Never surprise the president. So that's so out of my mistake. And I'm hoping that for any college or university student who is listening to this podcast, please learn from Mark's failure those many, many years ago.
You got me beat on that one. You got me beat. Mark, if you don't mind, can we do a little lightning round? Can I just ask you some just general stuff about the profession?
Certainly,
If you're not in too much of a hurry here. And I'm not asking you to speak in your official capacity. I'm just talking in general about, let's just go to a tough one right now. COVID-19 and universities and colleges. How is this? I can only imagine being in your seat right now. Is it a huge challenge? Is it something you're directly facing, or is that someone who's, as you mentioned, else on the team, the chief communications officer, whoever it may be, who's handling and fielding that strategy about messaging?
Well, in our case, it's the university's chief communications officer. But for COVID, this has impacted everyone. There is not a single person who's not been impacted by this pandemic. And I think that for colleges, universities, from the PR perspective, I think that it has really allowed the PR area to shine like never before, because there is such great need for PR officers to rise above the occasion and to show their stuff. And I'm hearing this not only from where I serve, but I'm hearing this from other PR officers across the nation who are saying, boy, I'm working probably twice as hard, but feeling so good about the role that I have, because it's allowing my staff, it's allowing me to really show what we can do to help pull our institution through this. And I know that nonprofit organizations are the same way. So as bad and as horrible as this pandemic is, and none of us would ever want to see this happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
Once we get through it, I do think that it has allowed us to become even better skilled at our craft. Yeah. So it has been, to that degree, I think, an opportunity that so many good PR people have seized and are winning.
Right. I talking about higher ed PR too. To me, colleges, universities, it's your own microcosm there. It's your own community there, basically. Even the small school, like I was director at, a couple of thousand people, whereas you were 30,000 plus, I believe, at University of Kentucky. But it's as they say, there's town and gown, right? There's the town you're in, but then there's the gown, there's the university or the college, right? But you really have your own microcosm. And I wonder if other people in public relations don't have a full understanding, really. And now your book would help outline that tremendously. So read the book, folks. That's the easy answer. But Mark, if we're before they get to the book, is there some differentials you could tell people who've never worked in higher ed PR? Maybe it's an agency person listening, or maybe it is that college student who is going in the profession and doesn't know which way to turn. Is there any just differential that you would kind of explain about how that works?
Certainly. Every day is different. It comes with days where you will have great news and you're on top of the world. And then there are other days where you get those surprises that are the types of pieces of news that you don't necessarily want to have to face, but that as a professional that you do. It'll also cause you to respond to the need at the moment. So you really have to become well-versed in so many ways. You had mentioned at the beginning of your show, Alex, what has been outlined in this book. And, you think about it, program leadership and management, crisis communications, social media, earned media, storytelling, philanthropy and donor communications, town and gown relations, branding, and so many other topics. And you think about that really in a package deal is what those of us who are in higher education, public relations work must see to. And we have to be very good at seeing to those, not just one aspect, but to all of those. So, so that
That's
it's a big task. It's a big
it is.
task, but and a huge responsibility. And going back to the practitioner versus professional, you know, if you as the PR person can can strategically handle each of those, by all means, you deserve to be called a professional.
Indeed. As I alluded to earlier, and this will be we'll kind of wrap up here after this, but as I alluded to earlier, even though I had worked nonprofit, I had worked for American Heart Association and for years and all that. So I understood fundraising basics, but I did not, Mark, I did not really have a firm understanding of fundraising when it came to um, a higher education setting. And what really caught my eye, you have a great anecdote, a great story about yours about this. And I'm going to kind of mess up these details, but I just want to get to the part that, so it was like these colleges or universities banded together to do one big capital campaign. Well, I worked at a college system. There was three local college and they tried to work together on stuff and it was hit or miss, I gotta say. And you nailed it though. And I think the primary reason why it didn't work, I'll let you tell everybody why, but here's the thing: points for wanting to work together and pooling resources, right? But ultimately, after the hoopla of announcing this big campaign went off, it didn't work out. And why was that?
Well, the point, the overall point is that on so many campaigns that are out there, we all start strong with them. I mean, as you know, the excitement, the buzz about being able to announce and launch a campaign, but when you start getting deep into it and there's a lot of work behind it and all, then our energies begin perhaps getting a little bit less. So the point that I was making in the book is that not only do we need to start strong, but perhaps even more importantly, we need to finish stronger.
Right.
And I teach a class at UK as well. I teach event planning for seniors, and was having this very conversation with my students. I'm very blessed to have just a terrific group of students. And I will tell those who are either mid-career or senior professional, let me tell you, the new generation coming up through the ranks, getting ready to go into this work, we have nothing to fear. These folks are really skilled. So I'm very excited about that. But I was making the point to them that whenever whether it's with an event you're starting to plan or whether it's a capital campaign that you're going to be doing, no matter what you're doing, I said there's always a natural part of it where we are excited and our energies are high and we start out really strong. But I said, after you go through all the hard work, don't allow yourself to lose that energy, that excitement. So finish stronger, and it will make a big difference, not only for you personally, but more importantly, it'll make a difference for the organization or institution that you represent.
Keep your foot on the gas is one thing, but you also mentioned too, unfortunately for that one incident, or not incident, but one example, it ultimately got down to people are most loyal to their own institution, right? And so that was something maybe that wasn't fully considered, and so then you got that issue because we ran into the same thing. It was, yeah, we're all work together, but ultimately the donor class and the people, the alums went to their school. You know what I mean? So it was interesting and a little frustrating because we were part of a college system, but ultimately they were a Peru State, a Chadron, or a Kearney. You know,
We need the three musketeers, don't we? One for all and all for one.
we do. We need that in this country too. Marc Whitt, I want to just give you a chance though to tell everybody one other thing and about why they should get this book, because I mean I cannot be more fulsome in my praise for it. But you're a trumpeter or trumpet player. I don't know.
That's right.
Yeah.
My dad was a high school band director, and I guess this is true that, you know, if you're in PR and you play trumpet, it's, you know, way to keep harmony in your profession. I don't know, but
Well, well, you know, you say this in the book, though. Every person in your organization matters. As members of a symphony orchestra, we each have critical roles to play in our organization's success as we perform in perfect harmony. Listeners, this is what the book's about. You're going to get some really great factual information, some stuff that can help you avoid some getting tripped up on certain things. But really, the thing that I love most about this book, besides all of this wonderful background you're going to get from a career in higher ed PR, is you're also going to get some life lessons and some reminders, again, that a servant's heart is an effective career growth strategy, and also that a sense of humor is probably just as important. And I just want to give Mark one last word here. Is there any other thing I didn't ask you about that we should talk about why they should read this book and why they should go into a career, and more importantly, in higher ed PR?
well, I've been in this work now for close to 35 years. It's kind of hard to believe. I look in the mirror and it's like, oh my gosh, when when did that happen? But the PR profession has been such a blessing. It has taken me places that a kid from a small town in Appalachia, Kentucky, never would ever dream of being. And I've had an opportunity, Alex, because of this book, to be able. I think it's important to be able to give back. And so I was in my hometown just a few weeks ago and had provided some copies for my high school library and to the public library there in town. Now, I'm not saying that so people go woo woo, or that I'm not looking at that, but I do think it's important, regardless of where we are, that we need to remember that none of us is a self-made individual. None of us. If you ever meet somebody who describes themselves as a self-made individual, buy them a cup of coffee and sit them down and have a talk of reality here. But we are where we are because others have sacrificed along the way. I mean, plain and simple. I'm where I am because so many others helped me. And so in my gifting back to my hometown libraries and my high school library, it wasn't about trying to make the headline of the local paper about doing so. No, not at all. It was just a small thing that I had to do to thank so many others. Many of my teachers obviously have since passed away, but still there are teachers and young people who are coming up, and anything that we can do to show them appreciation and to thank them, be grateful. I think that's another thing that, if we have fire in our bellies that takes us through our career, but also to do this with a grateful heart.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are going to be tough days. We all have tough days. There's a lot of stress that's involved in this work. But at the end of the day, we are so blessed to be doing what we're doing. And so in part, I want this book to be that word of encouragement too. It's not only instructing people kind of the 1, 2, 3s of what you do in this case or whatever, but also perhaps if nothing else, you maybe find yourself where you're just needing a word of encouragement, and this book hopefully will provide that word if you're needing encouragement, or if you're needing a bit of inspiration, or maybe a challenge.
It's so true. We do stand on the shoulders of giants. I believe that we've all done that, and giants are often not actual, bigger than life, but they're people like you mentioned. And I'll never forget when I was an intern in a PR capacity at getting my bachelor's degree. Randy Talley, who was probably, gosh, then he seemed so impossibly old to me. He was probably all of 27, but he taught me everything, and the thing was, I wasn't really listening, but as I look back, I realized he was trying to help me. And then fast forward to right before I took the job 15, 18 years later at the school in Nebraska, I told him I was going and I was terrified. He took me to lunch. He told me what kind of planner to use, which was a lifesaver. I still have these planners that he taught me how to use. And he gave me so much advice that, by the way, your book brought right back to me, which is never surprise the president. Do this, make sure you're always prepared. Do not just wing it with the president, especially all this great stuff. So it's all here in your book. And, you talk about a gift to your library and said, well, how about this, listeners? Well, how about this? Would you like to get an autographed copy of PR Lessons Learned Along the Way? I have managed to twist Mark's arm. I didn't have to twist his arm. He is such a sweetheart. He has offered an autographed copy or two, depending, out there of PR Lessons Learned Along the Way. And I'll make it so easy for you to get in the mix for a drawing to get one. Here's what you do. There'll be a link in the show notes, of course. And by the way, there'll be links to where you can buy these books too, because you're going to want to buy them in bulk, PR people, for your whole staff. But for the giveaway, it's real simple. Go to the AGPR, that's my PR firm's Facebook page, link in the show notes, and there'll be a post that will be pinned to the top for the next week. It'll be 7 days from the date of this episode drops. And all we're going to do is I'll just tell you what to do, which is just name one thing you learned or liked about this interview with Marc Whitt. And then out of all of the comments, we'll just assign each comment a number. We'll put it in a random number generator, and I'll contact you if you're selected and get your mailing address. I'll give it to Mark, and he will fire it away from his home in Kentucky right to yours. And I think that's just a great thing. It's a great gift, and it's very generous of you to do that, Mark.
Well, that's the least that I could do. And Alex, again, it has just been fantastic being on your podcast. As I have told you already so many times, you're probably getting tired of hearing me say this, but this is just one of the finest PR podcasts out there. So appreciate all the good work that you're doing.
Thank you very much. Well, to me, it's a labor of love, because this business, this profession has been very good to me. The door is always open for you. Don't be shy. Don't be bashful. I mean, come on, it gets bored being at home, working from home. You're going to want to talk. You're going to want to talk it out there, Mark. So you're always welcome here in the lounge. And again, Marc Whitt, Director of Media and Strategic Relations at University of Kentucky, author of PR Lessons Learned Along the Way, Strategies, Tips, and Advice for the Higher Ed and Nonprofit Public Relations Professional. Oh, you know what that means? Looks like it's last call here at your virtual lounge for PR news, views, and interviews. Don't forget, you can ask me a question anytime. You can do it through our Twitter account, which is @HoursPR, or even better, you can send me a message vocally. I would love to hear your voice, and I'll answer it on the show. There's a link in the show notes. All you have to do is sign up through Anchor FM. It's free, doesn't take long, and you record your message. I get the message. I will play your audio. Just give me your first name and the city you live in, and then I will answer the question to the best of my ability right here on the show. Don't forget to, if you're enjoying this podcast, you can support it and help increase the frequency and value of the show. Just consider being a sponsor for your brand or your agency, or just yourself because you're like, I like this show. Or just drop a few coins in the virtual tip jar. Either way, there's links in the show notes. Please check that out. All of that, of course, being in the show notes where you're listening right now, or at prafterhours.com. I see that they're turning up the lights. Last call is over, and I've got to clean up this virtual lounge. And until next time, I'm Alex Greenwood, and you've been listening to PR After Hours on Anchor FM.